Back, everyone. We are here again on YouTube and LinkedIn with another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game changing strategies, and of course, we hear from the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Josef Martens, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. With us today is Patrick Benoit. Patrick is the CISO of Vast Bank in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Before that, he held several tech executive roles for various other companies. And he's also a member of several advisory boards, and we're thrilled to have him with us today. Patrick, it's a pleasure to have you here in this conversation.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Patrick, our topic is leadership, and you are not just established as a leader, you're super successful in your journey as a leader. When you reflect on your own journey, when you ask yourself, well, how in the world did I get to where I am today? What do you think are some of the reasons for your success?
Well, I think a lot of it, it starts with making mistakes and then picking yourself back up from those mistakes because
Okay.
you can't, if you've gone through a career with no mistakes, then you're probably either telling us a lie or you're not highly successful because you've stepped on some problems. I think that's critical. It's how you recover from those
Okay.
mistakes. I think it's critical to learn very early on that all ships rise on the same tide. So if your team is successful, you're successful, and not the other way around. You can't be the only one that's making stuff happen,
Yeah.
and so that means you have to take care of your team. And so the last big point is you have to educate yourself and train yourself to on that emotional IQ side of the house so that you're thinking with your
Mm,
right brain a little bit, that you're leading with empathy, leading with vulnerability, willing to take ownership, extreme ownership. You own everything that happens on your team, even if it's a failure. It's all yours. And so those kinds of key characteristics for a leader are critical.
yeah. Yeah. I like the idea of making mistakes, embracing them, learning from them. I think that's great. And I think many people phrase it like that, but the reality is still it's really hard, right? I mean, I'm not sure that anyone can really say, mistake, come, come to me, I want you. Um, what was the moment where you were really able to accept that? Because I imagine that just takes a moment, right? We're not born waiting for the mistakes that we're
Yeah,
making.
Yeah, I mean, you beat yourself up a lot early on when
Right.
you have a lot of mistakes, and I mean, I think it's an exercise in letting go of the concepts of guilt and shame, and
Mm,
just understanding you can be responsible for something, but you shouldn't feel guilty about it unless, I mean, we're not talking about somebody intentionally doing,
sure.
malpractice or something like that. But if you're doing your best, and that's why I actually I teach my teams four basic principles that really come from a book that I was fortunate to read a long time ago by Don Miguel Ruiz called the Four Agreements. And
Okay.
so the first is that you always try and have the highest integrity you can have.
Mhm.
There are some things you can't share, but that's okay. It's okay to say, I can't share that with you right now, but you'll know when it's time for you to know.
Mhm.
So, but always be honest about it. The second is not to take anything personally. If Joseph gets up in the morning and he's not feeling very well and he comes to me and he starts, being aggressive or abusive or whatever the case is, I have the right to say, Joseph, we need to take a time out and maybe we can do this a different time. So I
Mm,
don't have to tolerate that. But
mhm.
I also need to understand that has nothing to do with me. It's about Joseph. It's what,
Mhm.
it's what's
Yeah.
going on in your, and so it's not personal. The third is to not make assumptions. It's okay to collect data and make observations, and then from all that data and observations to make an informed decision based on what you know. But making assumptions, meaning just jumping to a conclusion before you know what's going on, is never going to go well. And then the last thing is always do your best. If you're always doing your
Mhm.
best, that guilt and shame should not be there because you've done the best you can do. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, you know, wish you had chosen a different course, but hopefully you learn from
Sure.
it. And so those mistakes, the next mistake will be something different, not the same.
Yeah, yeah. I really like the concept of agreements. Very often we don't make explicit agreements, right? We think we have an understanding or have assumptions, and we've never really talked about what the agreement is, and then expectations go in different directions. Say the name of that book again so that people can look it up and
It's
dive into
called the
it.
Four Agreements. It's called the Four Agreements. The author is Don Miguel Ruiz, Ruiz.
Okay.
They now have a fifth agreement out there too, and I don't even remember what it was because four is enough for me right now. So
And there's going to be a book number two in there, right? So why not come up with a fifth
exactly,
agreement? Awesome.
yeah.
Let me take another look at your leadership journey from a different perspective. I imagine you had mentors, trusted advisors, role models, or other people who followed your journey. Talk to us about something that you picked up from them, advice you got, something that you saw in other people, something that still sticks with you today.
And I would couch that a little bit by saying, or at least boundary that a little bit by saying, it's not just learning from people that were your mentors or people that were that you consider good people or strong people. You
Hmm.
should be learning from everybody. So, sometimes what you're learning is how not to do something. I can remember early in my career, in my 20s, early 20s, I questioned some decisions that one of my directors were making, but I at least had the wherewithal to step back and say to myself, you're only 20 something. You probably don't know all the pieces that go to this puzzle. So it's maybe not a bad decision that they're making, but you just don't know. Well, what I found out over time is that's less often the case, and more often it is just a bad decision. And so you have to contend with that. But I had leaders who would hire somebody on paper before somebody they knew from internal. And that makes still to this
Oh,
day makes no sense to me
right.
whatsoever because I told this director, I said, look, I can make you think I'm the greatest thing in the world on paper, but you
Yeah.
don't know. You can ask me questions and I
Yeah.
can fool you in an interview.
Yeah.
Why would you ever overlook somebody that's already been with you for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, done a great job for you? Give them the promotion. And then
Yeah.
at least if you're hiring an unknown, you're hiring at the bottom of the charts, not at the top, not in the middle kind of thing. So that's important. And then most of everything else had to do with the idea of this leading with empathy and vulnerability and compassion and ethics, keeping
Hmm.
your ethics in front of you. I had a gentleman that was a mentor of mine, peer and a mentor, and he said one time, I was just saying, man, I just can't believe these people keep doing these bad things and they keep succeeding. They keep getting
Mm.
more. They keep
Yeah.
promoting. And he said, well, he said, I could have walked into the leadership here and just told them that I would help them get their 10% cuts to save them cost. And I could do it really quickly because I had such a large team. I said, but I wasn't willing to, just like you're not willing to throw everybody under the bus and step over them on top of them to get what you want. And
Mm.
so we're never going to um, make those kinds of advances. We're going to be advancing on our principles, not on
Yeah.
somebody else's
Yeah.
back. So,
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I also like the reframing of the question that you did at the beginning, looking at the people who are maybe not the best example. Brings the question to my mind: who do you think you learn more from? From those painful experiences, or the ones where we think they're totally wrong, or do you think we learn more from positive examples?
and I'll reframe that again because I don't think you learn any more or less than from either one. I think
Okay.
you learn a different thing. Now, my belief is, and I've always had this belief, that we only do things in life for two reasons. We're either trying to increase our pleasure or we're trying to decrease our pain.
Avoid pain.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, so we're
Hmm.
going to, from the people that do things we don't like, we're going to learn how to probably avoid pain,
Hmm.
you know? And so that might be a more attractive way to learn because you still have the pleasure you had to begin with. So you're getting rid of the bad stuff and you're just all good stuff. Now, you can learn from the good people all these
Right.
things of how to improve
Yeah.
pleasure and things like that, but you may learn more from decreasing that pain.
Yeah. Got it. Now, we talked about the past, Patrick. I'd like to take a look at today. And this is, again, not a question about organizations, titles, roles, or so. It's about your leadership journey. When you look at where you are today, what's an area where you feel there is a next level? There is an area that you want to focus on in your growth because you know there is more that you can have.
Yeah, I'm still on that journey, that right brain journey. I think that we still have the opportunity to do so much more
Mm,
with teaching the next generation and helping them to be better leaders than we were, continuing to learn to be better leaders ourselves. Helping people to succeed and having that mission in life. And I know it was cliche years ago to talk about service leadership,
mm,
and I mean, it's a buzzword, but the fact is, we should be doing everything we do ultimately to help somebody else succeed. And so that's always a focus area for me. If you were talking about just pure technical kinds of things well, I would love to, learn more about, finance. And I'm pretty good at finance. I have a minor in accounting and stuff like that, but
okay.
still, there are levels of finance in the
Yeah.
executive levels and especially, and in specific industries too, that we just don't get in the basics of your
Yeah.
schooling. So those are things I'd like to learn. I'd love to learn. For me now, being in banking, I want to learn more about the business. And
Yeah.
I think that's the real key. Every leader in my mind should be
Hmm.
daily asking themselves, how can they know more about the business and how can they know more about
Hmm.
helping the business succeed? Because it's not just about the
Yeah.
technology or it's not just about the security. It's about how
Yeah.
can you contribute to make them succeed, and the best way to do that is to know the business better.
Yeah, yeah. I like the way you phrased that question. How can I help the business succeed? Right?
Yeah.
Because everyone can. There's always a next step in what we can do, where we can look, who we can connect with to help the business grow.
Well,
Yeah.
and the example that you leave in your wake is so strong. I
Mm,
actually had a gentleman once worked for me, and he was a team leader. And I at one point said to him, "Man, you do such a great job. There's some roles available to be a manager on some of these other teams." And he was very, very hurt by that I would even suggest, because for him it meant that I didn't need him anymore. I didn't want him anymore. And I had to
interesting.
explain, no, that's not the case. It's a little bit selfish, because if we have adopted a way and I've taught you the way I like to see things done, and you then take that and move to another team, then I've just exponentially
Yeah,
grown the breadth of doing it the way I like it. And so eventually maybe the whole world does it the way I like it, right?
yeah, yeah. I like this image that you're using there of leaving something in your wake. What is it that you would like to leave in your wake?
I would like people, that quote legacy to be
Uh-huh.
that I was always interested in helping the, people in the organization from a business point of view.
Mm,
Ultimately, I would like people to think that no matter what I did, I was always trying to give of myself and give back to other people, and in that way give back to the organization, give
yeah.
back to the community, give back to whomever it is. Everything else is very transitory.
Mm,
But that sense that everybody looks at you and says, "Man, he really helped." That's really the only thing that
got it.
matters.
Yeah, got it. When you look at your repertoire of leadership tools, of what you can do as a leader, or what you like to do as a leader, what's a go to tool that you have? What is something that always works? Something that where you're not sure how do I handle a situation, it's the default that you fall back on to tackle something.
Yeah, I have a few things that fall into that
Hmm.
category. One is just the simple fact that I never diagnosed, but I'm convinced I have OCD like crazy, because man, I can like categorize and I got to organize, and I don't have to walk by and touch it 5 times or anything to that degree. But man, I got to line it up. Your pencil's got to be set on the desk the right way and so forth. So that organization, though, brings a level of attention to detail that I think is
Mm,
super important. But the other thing really goes back to some innate qualities that I had nothing to do with. I was just blessed with them, which is I have always had the ability to really easily abstract from one situation to another. So, early on, and that's what makes it so easy for me to turn tech speak into business or
mm,
non-tech speak is because I can make those analogies, which now that's the big thing is they tell you in speaking classes and stuff, use analogies to get your
right.
message across. Well, I can look at something that I have no knowledge of whatsoever, and as I'm listening to it be described, I will then say, "Oh, that's like this," and they'll go, "Yeah." I went, "Okay, I got it." That
Nice.
answers the questions
Yep.
because you know there are things we don't know in science, but 90% of everything that's out there is going to follow some kind of principle we've already dealt with
Yep.
once before.
Yep.
So you get that. And then the other innate quality I've been benefited with is blessed with is um, I used to have, I would have said, photographic memory early on. I have really good memory. My wife always laughs at me for knowing the credit cards by heart and stuff like that, but I say now, my joke now is I still have photographic memory. My problem now as I've gotten older is that it takes 3 days to develop. So,
I like it.
yeah,
Very good. What you say there about the metaphors or the analogies reminds me a little bit of about Miss Marple from the Agatha Christie novels, right? Because Miss Marple solved all the crimes because she recognized someone from her village in the situation. And once she knew this person was the butcher or the tailor in the village, she knew how the person would handle something, and she could categorize it. Nice.
yeah,
Let
very
me
true.
ask you a question about the future now, Patrick. Let's assume that we were to have this conversation again in 5 years. And we're talking about what happened over the last 5 years in leadership. What do you think we might be talking about? What are the changes that are coming in leadership?
I think the biggest change slash challenge that we're facing in the world of business today is as the world shrinks because we become more global, um, the the cultural differences have to be meshed and merged and figured out. We do business in the US in a very different style than, say, India
Mm,
or Japan or Germany. And so right now, we're generally able to stay within our own confines of culture to lead. Even with a global team, depending on the company culture is going to dictate that. So if I'm
yeah.
working for a large US conglomerate and I have teams all over the world, they're going to speak English and they're
Right.
going to kind of follow our rules and so forth. I think more and more that's going to have to blend somehow. And I'm not exactly sure how that happens, but it's going to have to blend somehow. So I think that's going to be a big challenge. I think along those cultural lines too, we have such different, I hesitate to say values as much as ways to express our values in as generations change.
Mm,
And so, trying to understand why a particular generation does a particular thing rather than just saying that's not right or we shouldn't do that
yeah.
anymore is wrong. And we have a real challenge in today's world with taking actions out of context and trying to apply, for example, today's cultural standard or morality standard
Okay.
to 100 years
Yeah.
ago when the world
Yeah.
was a very different place.
Makes no sense.
And that to
Hmm.
me doesn't make the person
Hmm.
any good, any better or worse. They lived in a different world.
Hmm.
So I challenge anybody that tries to impose today's morality on 100 years ago I challenge that they probably would be acting the same way as these other people 100 years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
because that was society. That doesn't, again, make it right or right. It could still be wrong behavior, but we have to have a little compassion and
Yeah.
understanding about the times, and that's going to happen more and more as we accelerate this journey. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Almost impossible to get back
yeah,
into the context there and understand
right.
what the drivers are. Yeah. Patrick, let me ask you a last question and then we wrap it up. When you look at how
Sure.
many tech leaders lead their organizations and you could change something, what would that be? Let's imagine you had a magic wand and you could change tech leadership for the better, maybe, and do something. What would that be?
Well, there's really, in my opinion, again, you try and simplify, but there may be more, but there's two primary reasons I think people leave a company. They're just on that path of climbing the ladder,
Hmm.
and they don't see a path where they are. They need more money, more prestige, more title, whatever, and they're just
Right.
in that. And then they have not grown and matured to a point where they understand that's not the end all be all. That's
Hmm.
okay. It's not, again, that's not a judgment. That just is what it is. The other is that people don't leave companies, people leave leaders. And so when you see an organization where there's lots of transition out of the company, out of the company, out of the company, and you can look deep into who are the leaders there.
Yeah.
There's either a cultural problem within the leadership, or there's a single leader that's creating the problem, because people wouldn't leave if they wouldn't leave as much. You'd still have some that want to leave because there's just no opportunity or there's not the money they want. But most of the time, people are leaving leaders, not companies.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Patrick, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you in the conversation here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm honored to be a guest here. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. To everyone else out there, make sure to like, subscribe, share the podcast, and join us again for our next episode. And most importantly, make sure to keep your brain cells active.